Ed? Okay.
Fred, thank you. Fred, thank you for the introduction. I had to just click over and acknowledge that I'm being recorded right now. But I think I've been doing this class for, I think this is about the fourth one of this in particular presentation we've done through the New Knowledge Adventures Network. And it's been a great class talking to people. Typically, we've done this in person. And so this is the first one we've tried to do virtually, I guess. So it's a very interactive course, or has been a very interactive course. And so we're adjusting a little bit to accommodate for that. But so much of this is built around your questions and your comments and stuff like that. And so like Fred said, if you have questions that come up during the sections we're going through, feel free to put it in that chat box from there. And we have different specific breaks on there. We'll go through and answer the questions on each section, but at the same time, we'll encourage whatever else questions to come in from there. We kind of answer as much as we can with it. So my background has been so much on making things safer, whether I was working in the business sector or my time here at the Boise Police Department. A couple assessments and couple specialist certifications I've got through are built around kind of designing things and making things safer, or being able to go through and assess different areas, different situations for that safe type of situation, looking at that environment and what we can physically do to make a place more habitable, more safe for everyone, because that's ultimately what we want to have from it, whether it's a residential situation like we're going to talk so much about today, or even if we get to other places in our community, making stuff right the first time, just doing things right. And so that it's a more enjoyable space for us. It's a more crime-free space for us, and for everyone's better for it. So to go ahead and get started, I'm going to put up a picture of a house here. And I don't believe this one's in Boise. Most of the pictures you're going to see today are actually from around the area where I've gone out and about through my work, taking pictures of different properties, or just driving around and kind of looking at things to both get good ideas, bad ideas, everything else in between from there. And so this is going to be the first time I'm going to ask everyone to unmute. And so Kathy and hopefully Fred can help me through this, getting people unmuted and muted again. But just take a look at that home right there. And when you see that house, what kind of activities do you think happen here? What kind of things that go on in a place like this?
One of the things, it would appear that you could steal the flowers right off of the front porch.
That's that's always possible, and we get reports of talking about things stolen from the front of the houses, things that from there. But I just think of the bigger picture of it. How many things do we have on our front porch, from flowers to benches to decorations like that don't get stolen? And that kind of plays into some kind of the home security and some of the kind of ideas behind it when we talk about it. But when I look at this picture, we've taught the class before, and we've had people kind of talk about what the things going on here, they kind of think of that residential family. They think it's a happy family that lives there. It's they're active in the neighborhood. It's just a place that people wouldn't mind going and visiting with those neighbors there, from that, just with the impression they get of that house, what's going on. Then I put the second house. This is a Boise house. It's actually the rental I think I grabbed from one of the websites a while back. But when we ask about impressions of people, what they think of this house, what goes on here, I get kind of some different responses from the other one. Sometimes we're on the negative side of it, just on the impression people get of what may or may not have on here. But there's some distinct differences back and forth from maintenance, from upkeep, of things from there that people take a look at, and they kind of mention about it. But it ultimately comes down to, people have different perceptions of different property based off of many things. Obviously, most people can just look at it and say, yep, I like this one. Yep, I don't like this one. Yep, I'd feel safe here. No, I wouldn't be safe here. But it kind of goes beyond on that to different principles, different concepts, different things that we try to employ in different places. We try to teach people. to help in their spaces and stuff like that. And it ultimately comes down to just kind of the design piece like that. And so our objectives today are kind of go through many of those things, both from the kind of the theory piece like that to the physical piece to how to assess your own home, talking about landscaping and vacation security from there. But ultimately, everything here that we talked about today is for you to feel safer in your home, you to be more crime free in your home. Uh, can I guarantee that everything you're going to do here is going to stop crime from happening altogether? Can't do that. We can never do that. But so many of the things, if they're applied properly, they can reduce the chances of victimization. They reduce the chances of crime. Plus, if nothing else, make you feel safer and more secure in your environment with that. And that's ultimately what we go through and want to be about, is just making it safer, making you feel safer in your home, because that's where you're going to spend the vast majority of your day, of your night, and you want to feel secure in your environment. No one wants to feel fearful from their neighbors for crime or what's going on. And so ultimately, it's about doing the things that we can physically do to make us safer in our environments. And so moving on, I'm not expecting everyone to know what crime prevention through environmental design is, but you're going to get to hear a little bit about it today, because so much of prevention, so much of security, so much of what I do on a day in and day out basis revolves kind of around these theories and concepts that go with it. But ultimately, it's the proper design and effective use of the built environments can lead to a reduction in fear of crime and the incidence of crime and an improvement in quality of life. In simple terms, basically, we design an environment to lead to people not being fearful and reducing crime. And ultimately, if there's a reduction in crime, if people aren't fearful of a spot, it can lead to a better place. It can lead to a better quality of life in that spot. How I explain so many examples when I'm talking about crime prevention through environmental design is kind of looking through that park of you, probably just your neighborhood park, because we've all been to a park. We've probably all driven by a park. There's so many in Boise. Maybe we've taken our kids or grandkids there, and so we're going to take them to places we feel safe at, and kind of think behind it, what makes that park design feel safe for us to want to be there with our kids, with our families. Typically, most of us have an open space, and so that goes into kind of visibility. We can see around from there. Typically, most of them are clean and well kept. We're going to go to the ones that we feel or have the most attention paid to them from there, because it feels like a safer place of it. And there's so many other things that I can play into there, from lighting to activities to everything else, that makes it feel like a safer place, and ultimately it does make it a safer place, because if we have a park in a neighborhood setting that all the families feel safe to go out into and they use it on a frequent basis, it is going to be safer because we have those good neighbors out there using it all the time. And because they're unafraid to go out there, because they use it all the time, that typically does keep away kind of that bad element for the most part, given those things we talk about. Like I said, we can't guarantee every spot is going to be crime free all the time, but we can increase increase that perception that I'm safe in this place and I feel comfortable in this place, to improve the life in that setting, to improve that park setting, to improve that residential setting from there. So ultimately, when I'm talking about crime prevention design, I'm wanting to discourage any inappropriate and aggressive behavior. And in a residential setting, that could be people stealing things off your front porch. That could be aggressive solicitation or unwanted solicitation. It could be many other activities from there. But ultimately, I'm looking to promote everything that's positive and appropriate for those interactions that would happen in kind of in a residential setting here. And that's ultimately what the goal of what we're looking for. I'm going to play a quick video here for you. I love this video so much. It doesn't deal with residential security, but it kind of defines that the idea of being able to change people's behaviors and how they act in certain settings just by changing little things here and there. So it does have sound on it. I hope you got your sound on, because you're probably listening to me right now. And let me play this for you. more videos by Volkswagen than the whole kind of fun theory that I don't play in these, but I played in other presentations like that. It's all about simple little things here and there. And like in this thing, for an example in particular, they changed something on the stairs to make it more interactive, maybe a little more fun in this case. And they saw so many more people using the stairs because of that one change they made. And I've played other videos that they actually did things with actually in the park type setting with trash cans. And they were able to do things to the trash cans that made people actually put trash in them more frequently with that. And so it just kind of the whole theory concept about everything of changing things in the environment to change people's behaviors and how they think about a space, how they treat a space from there. And now we're going in and kind of talking about that and how we'll get into applying it to our residential settings. Oops, there we go. So when I'm talking about our SEPTED principles, these are our 4 things I typically talk about. There's other underlying goals and the concepts and stuff like that, depending on who you talk to, who you learn it from. But these are the main 4 things I definitely talk about every single time, kind of main principles behind it. So the first of natural surveillance, the next of access control, the next of territoriality, and finally the maintenance piece, which ties so many of those other pieces beautifully together. So getting into the natural surveillance piece, it is truly about the design and placement of the features to maximize visibility. If I'm walking down the street and then more people can see me, I'm safer because of that, because there's people to see me, help me, keep me safe. And at the same time, if I can see better in the environment I'm at, obviously I can play a bigger role in my security and being able to act or react to any situations that may present themselves, or even removing myself from a situation like that. So ultimately, the more visible a space is, the more visible we have around our properties, the better it is for seeing crime or seeing potential crime from there. And at the same time, for that potential offender point of view, it's less appealing because they can be seen. I've gone into so many studies and read about them. And one of the big things that factors into a person's decision, whether they're going to commit a crime or commit an act, is the ability to be caught or have that act caught. And so if it's more easily seen, if that more act can be more easily detected by people seeing it or observing it, then it's less act to happen from there. So I'm going to start getting into a few of my pictures in here to kind of walk through kind of show you the good and the bad. Typically, a perfect residential security presentation or SEPTED presentation will be out there somewhere, being able to look at stuff, good and the bad and stuff like that, which I challenge you to go around your neighborhood, go around your house after this and kind of take a look at it from a different perspective. But when we'll see the first house that we have on screen here, we talk about the visibility of there. Can anyone from the inside of the house see that mailbox very easily? I'm going to say yes. Could anyone from inside that house see the driveway fairly easily, see the front yard very easily, see the cars driving by very easily? Definitely without there, just because there's an openness to it, from how the landscaping is maintained to everything else from there, how the number of windows they have at the front of their house. And so anything that would go on in that property from there is so much more easily seen from inside the house, from a neighbor driving by, walking by, from a neighbor across the street. And so because that visibility is there comes that perception that if I committed a criminal act on this property, whether I'm stealing the mail or going up to the front porch to steal a package, that someone's going to see it that much more easily. And so that's kind of the whole piece about that whole natural surveillance, is being able to see so much better. And even from there, we'll start talking about lighting and other things like that. So this is another house that we had in another neighborhood that I actually lived in. And once again, could you see in the driveway if you were inside the house? Maybe not as easily, just because the layout is a little bit different of the house. And so if I'm at the front door, if I'm at the front windows, my view is naturally obstructed a little bit, just because the design of the house itself pushes the garage out further. Are there other opportunities to see that person walking by, driving by from the inside the house? Definitely. You have the windows there where they are looking upon the front. They're not obstructed in any method. And so it gives that perception of visibility that an act would go unnoticed from there. Another design in another neighborhood in the area. And once again, when I ask people about these, what they think of just the visibility around there, obviously there's some natural obstructions that we see just with the built environment from there. And so the big wall, first and foremost, would be kind of an obstruction to visibility. Um, there's good that's bad that goes with it as well. I kind of have to balance the line between privacy and security when it comes down to it. But when privacy increases in certain settings, the visibility, like in this setting, decreases from there. And so just that small wall put up there blocks more visibility back into the door. Even the door being recessed back like that has more visibility blocked from it. And so it's not as visible to someone driving by, walking by, to the neighbors, anything else like that. Just want to challenge you on your screen to kind of point out to where the door is on this property. And this is one of the things that was, for the most part, a very well maintained property in the neighborhood that I lived in, but it had some natural obstructions through plants, through landscaping, to the visibility of the house. And so just by planting a shrub here and a tree here and having it grow to a certain level was blocking the visibility to the front of this property. And so in its essence, if a person came to the front door and knocked on the door, would a neighbor see them? Could someone driving by them see in? If someone was doing anything at the front of the house, isn't necessarily as visible to that next person walking by. If I'm that homeowner and I'm looking out the window, are there natural obstructions now in my view of that car driving by, that parking on the corner, that kid walking by on the sidewalk? And just because of the design of the things we put in that environment, it does obstruct the visibility, making it, I'm not going to go as far as to say a less safe environment, but it's a visible environment for anyone interacting there. And this slide is the last one I talk about visibility, kind of goes into my next point on UpSepTed, but kind of a compare and contrast of a couple different fences we have there and the visibility with each. You'll see some neighborhoods around here that the fencing has to be the one on the left, where it is the wrought iron. And there's so many others that have the one on the right, where you'll probably see them more frequently. Even my fence, like at home, is like that. And so one, you can see better through, and because of that, people can see what's going on there. People can see in and out a little bit better than the one on the right. It doesn't make one necessarily better or worse. It's kind of given the situation, given the circumstances about each that's going to be better for. But in this case, it was a method of fencing that they opened up there and used the wrought iron as opposed to just your natural wood slats, where it made it more visible so people can see in and out of that. Which moves us on to our next piece, which is access management, which is all about guiding people to and from a space. You see these so many times in our communities, from putting a sidewalk here, putting landscaping here and there, but ultimately it's about controlling people where we want them to go, where they should go, where they shouldn't go, of that. What we probably see the most frequent of example of this, especially in our home setting, is any setting, is just doors and locks and things of that nature. We put them up, we install them correctly, and we put the locks on there to keep people out of our house. It's really that simple when it comes down to it. But looking past that initial door, that initial lock, into other methods that we use that we can think about from there. Once again, there's the fencing piece. Again, we're keeping people out of that the environment. But even just a simple gate in this house is the exact same house from the previous picture. But in this case, they added a simple gate in front of there to add another little additional barrier. It's open, so it's not blocking visibility, but is that going to define ownership of that property a little bit differently because they have another method of control at a little bit further than from the front door? It may keep a solicitor away. It may keep another person away that was wanting to go up to the front. It may keep that package that goes on the side a little bit safer because we add another barrier in that setting to add a different method of access control there. This is another place around Boise we took a picture of, which was kind of the same idea what they're doing. They're trying to create a private space. They're trying to kind of define the space back there. But ultimately, maybe does it go a step too far with creating so much of obstruction to the visibility in the setting? So obviously, we kind of know where the front door might be in this case, But if I was a person going up to that front door with, bad purposes, could I see what's going on? Does that person that lives in the house now with that big fence there, can they see out as easily to see what's going on in the mailboxes across the street? There are people driving by, walking by, anything, and just by adding a little bit different method of access control, I guess, it's maybe obstructed more visibility, maybe causing more of a problem than a benefit from that. This is another example of a simple access fence where I could probably even very easily step across it, go across it, anything else from there. But because that boundary is set officially there with the fence, how many people are actually going to cross that line? If they want to cross it, they might walk around and go up to where there's an opening in the fence over here on the left-hand side, as opposed to step over that simple fence. So it defines the property a little bit more, and at the same time, people treat that a little bit differently. They treat it as the barrier it is, and at the same time, it's low enough. It doesn't block as much visibility as some of the other earlier fences we saw with that. So the next piece we talk about is territoriality, and this is all about truly showing ownership over a space. And this is where it can really play into effect, especially in a residential type setting, of showing that ownership. What we want to do with territoriality is kind of define out what's my private space, what's the semi-private space that you can use, but it's still mine, and what's the public space from there. Kind of a typical thing you'll kind of see this defined out is just, your average sidewalk on the street, walking by maybe in front of your house. Obviously, we all know that's a public space, and so people feel comfortable from there. But the next space on the driveway, that's kind of defined out more as a semi-private space where you don't see people frequently walking up there unless they're simply coming to the door because they know the ownership level is different from there. And so we see even those, some of the definition of those will find out a little bit differently with how they treat the driveway itself in different types of paving, and different colors of paving, and different designs of paving. Kind of find that out a little bit further. And then we can get to the private space. That's obviously the stoop right in front of our house where we have our porches, we have our patios, we have that first walkway up there. And it's defined differently sometimes by a step up in elevation or columns in front of a house or something else from there that kind of defines it out as more as my space, more so my private space. And people treat that differently because it's defined out. It has a different level of ownership there as well with it. And so I go back to this picture you just saw. And once again, the private space, we see that up there. We have it defined out there as pretty much anything behind the fence, truly, because they created that boundary there to kind of show ownership over what's behind there. The sidewalk, public space, anyone can walk by, but it starts getting to the private space behind that simple little fence right there. This is a great example of just a front doorway area, front stoop of a house, where they defined it out. They show a little more ownership of it by having plants out there that are well taken care of, little shrubs with that. And so it shows that someone is going out there and tending to those flowers, tending to the plants, trimming the shrubs. And just that sense of ownership, knowing that people are going out there and paying attention to the property, has people treated differently for many aspects. You can think of it as a visibility piece of that, of people are going to be paying attention to that spot, because by coming out and watering the flowers, trimming the flowers, doing it from there, or just the fact is, people put those out there to show ownership of the space. They're paying attention to it. They care about that space. And so people are going to treat it differently than the next space from there. Another great example that actually has so many of the ownership pieces in there, but once again, looking at the kind of the territoriality lens of it and the sidewalk that goes up to there, given we have the fences on either side kind of defining and that access point of where we want people to walk up to the house, but just the simple change in pavement going up to the house has a different sense of ownership to it. So you're stepping out from the sidewalk, this is probably just your normal pavement down here, into a different pavement that someone had to have designed that specific way. So a different ownership level of that pavement, and people treat it differently, that space now, because the different sense of ownership once they step onto that property. Last but not least, this might even be most important out of all of them, is just the physical maintenance piece like that, which can sometimes be the most difficult. I've had whole presentations on subject where I've gone hours and hours talking about it, presenting on it, where I can just spend so much time on that piece because everything looks great when it's planted the first time. Everything looks great when we first install it, but there's a certain upkeep that we have to it. And ultimately, yeah, it shows more ownership. The more we keep up these spaces, the more we're able to keep them up and maintain to a proper condition. So this is the house I lead off with because just the ownership and upkeep of it. It probably takes that homeowner a little bit of work to maintain the flowers, to maintain the shrubs in a good setting, maintain the trees, maintain the mowing on the lawn. But you can definitely tell they invest that time into it. So once again, different perception of the ownership over it, different perception of the visibility of people paying attention to the area just because it's so well kept and maintained from there. And I took this picture specifically not to pick on anything, but just kind of show a different ownership level from there. This is a house that's been abandoned for a while when I took the picture, but you just kind of see the surroundings up there and just the perception a person would have of what may or may not go on that property. Would a person necessarily know if a kid went up and graffitied that? Would a person necessarily know if someone went up and broke a window from there? And it's all about, once again, the property had not been maintained because it had been abandoned for a while, but the activities that would more encourage because no one has ownership of it, no one has viewership of it, no one's maintaining that property. Because it could be an abandoned house that no one's living in, maybe it's a rental that no one's living in another neighborhood that still gets maintained, it still has the lawn mowed, it still has everything else, the shrubs trimmed, everything else from there. That maintains that sense of maintenance, the sense of ownership of it because people are maintaining it and taking care of it that way. This is a house in a neighborhood, and it has the good and the bad. I put it in here as kind of the description of the bad for the most part. You see, the fence knocked down over to your left-hand side on the gate. Going from there, you see the weeds kind of overgrow the lawn, not mowed. And so once again, the maintenance isn't there as much. And so just your perception, is anyone paying attention to that property, comes to mind. And comparing that to a couple of properties we looked at earlier, I'm going to say if someone is paying attention to it, they're not paying attention to that as much. And so is that going to attract a different type of activity there? If a person wanted to come do this or that, the next thing, definitely with that. But there is one good thing I'd like to talk about on there. And it's the basketball hoop, which plays into our next piece like that. And so one piece I didn't cover in our first 4 points, this kind of ties into all of them, but it's kind of the activity support. And so it's the placement of activities to support natural surveillance, access management, territoriality, the whole piece from there. And that basketball hoop that I had right there is a great example of it, given there were kids living at this house at one point in time. That's why the hoop was played out there. But how many other kids that live in that cul-de-sac in that street are now going to go out and shoot baskets on that hoop? And how many more extra set of eyes do you now have on this property, on the next property, on the vehicles on the street, and everything else, because it has a simple basketball hoop right there to attract more people to use that space. The more people that are using it appropriately, the better off that space is going to be, the better off those homes are going to be with it. Took this one from the internet, but just the whole little table and chairs onto the front porch right there gives the opportunity for that homeowner to go out and have their coffee and see what's going on in the front of their house, what's going on the sidewalk, who's driving by, everything else from that. And so by just having that ability to go out there and do that, having it facilitated almost by having a table and chairs there, it's making the whole street safer. It's making the house safer because you're adding a activity so the person goes out there and sees what's going on at the front of their house more frequently. Even from there, looking at gardens, the shrubs and stuff up front, things that keep people out front, keep people outside, maintaining their property, be observant of the property, is making it safer because you're outside, you're out and about, you're seeing what's going on. And in turn, just a simple bench like you have there on the left-hand side on the front could make that house safer and make the rest of the neighborhood safer as long as people are out using it, they're out maintaining their shrubs, they're out maintaining the front of the house, just adding those activities in the spaces we would want them to increase the that homework to get out there and enjoy the spot. So I always like to have people take a look at these from a second look now. The same two houses we're gonna go before. And so the first house that we looked at what are all the things happening on here, good and bad? From looking at it, is there a surveillance piece of it that goes on to it? You have the window over there, you have the shrubs trimmed low, you have the light on even in the background that maintains a little more visibility around the property. Even how the front door isn't set far as back where it can see out onto the street and onto the property a little bit more. It's promoting that visibility around the property. The access, we have some different definitions. The sidewalk, the paving there is a little bit different from the street, and so a little bit more show of accessibility or more show of ownership over that and the accessibility piece of it. You have the sidewalks going up there and even defined out a little bit differently for the front of the house. You see the fence on the left-hand side there of controlling access between properties a little bit as well. And looking at it from the maintenance piece of it as well, the grass is trimmed, the shrubs are trimmed low. Even the flowers that Fred mentioned before that he was worried about getting stolen, they're out there showing that someone pays attention to them because they're live flowers. Someone has to water them. And so another sense of ownership we have there with territoriality, plus people paying attention to the property because they put it out there and they maintain them. Different sense of what's going on there. You can't see the table and chairs and stuff behind the little stoop as much behind the railing, but there's a piece out there for that homeowner to come out and enjoy the front of the house to see what's going on to maintain the property. And so in the most part, it's I would grade that pretty positively from many of our step 10 aspects. Moving on to the second one, has access up to the front of the house? Yeah, that's there. It's there. Is there some visibility to the front of the property to some of the street and stuff there? Yeah, there's not that necessarily defined sidewalk just because of the age of the property and the age of where it's at, and so there's not as much foot traffic through there for visibility, but there's potential, I guess, when it's shrubs to the left-hand side. Could that be a hindrance to the visibility of the property and blocking what's going on? Possibly. Does it really show a lot of ownership, I guess, when it comes down to it in the end? And I guess the grass is trimmed. It looks like it's not as watered as well, but it doesn't show that same sense of ownership you've seen in other places that just change people's perception of the activity and the attention paid to that property in of itself. So, Fred, this is our first spot for questions we're going to open up to. So I'm going to turn it over to you to facilitate that. Fred, you're still on mute.
Good call. Thank you, Ed. First thing I'm going to do is let me look at the chat box to see if we have anything there that we might ask. Then secondly, I think what I'll do, why don't we open up the microphones. Let's open up the microphones to anybody, and then any of our 20 participants might ask you a question. Would that be okay with you?
That's perfect.
Okay, let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. So everybody should have the opportunity to ask Ed any questions that they may have. And the one question I would have, Ed, is, the current trend or the current interest seems to be this doorbell circumstance where you can see who's ringing your doorbell. Is that a real value to the homeowner?
I'll unmute myself now. And I saw a comment earlier, I need to talk up a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and try to talk up a little bit better. But from a visibility piece like that, yes, there's so many other pieces I can go into why. And I actually have a few examples and cover a little more things specifically here in a second. So great question. And we'll cover a little bit more on it here momentarily.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have a question of Ed that you'd like to ask? I noticed in that one picture that you did show that the garbage can was upside down next to the house. That would be an open invitation to me to know that nobody's there And if I was going to vandalize a property, it'd probably be an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I was in the house a little bit because it wasn't unoccupied property. And so I did that because it showed a few more of the things to show it wasn't being kept and taken care of, like the garbage can upside down, like the water not having as much on the lawn.
Sure.
But it kind of emphasized out, like, once again, the whole perception piece, those simple things like that. And a little bit later on, I'm going to tie them into a few more security things about properties on vacation security, things like that, going through it. So if there's no other questions, let's go ahead and jump on to the next piece. All right. Anytime we go out to a property, anytime I'm talking to anyone about residential security, and I'm teaching our officers about residential security, we talk about our 3 L's, and our 3 L's can all be tied back to everything we talked about so far with Septet of why we do this stuff. So our first L is locks. And so we put locks on places to control access. And so, for example, we have a lock on our front door, keeping people from just walking in and coming into our house at all times. And so when we go and look at a residence, when we go to assess a residence, we'll look at the locks they have the house, those access control pieces around there, and recommend them in certain places or recommend certain kind of them in certain places. Kind of a guideline, if we're just talking about to start with that front door, I want to, your handle lock on there, but more importantly, I want a deadbolt on there. And we'll talk about installing that a little more properly, or have you check it so it's installed a little more properly here in a second. The next piece, which you've probably heard me harp on so much in my previous Septet slides, just the landscaping side of it. So it can really promote ownership. It can control access, promote visibility around the spot, dealing with so many things. But if not properly maintained, it can block visibility. It can prevent access or unwanted access from there, and it can show that the property might not be paid attention to with that. So. Lastly, lights. I have a whole slide on. I go through costs and stuff like that. I have a couple of good and bad light examples. I can probably go forever if I had to on just lighting in a security type setting. But if you do nothing else from this presentation, if you learn nothing else from this presentation, learn the one thing that lighting is probably the easiest and most cost-effective thing we can do to secure our properties, our home properties at night. Lighting promotes visibility. And so if I'm a would-be prospective criminal, and I'm looking at this property and this property, one that has good lighting, the other one that has poor lighting, which one I'm going to go through to look through their vehicle, to everything else like that. The property that has the poor lighting every single time is probably going to get picked because the lack of visibility there, the lack of someone being able to detect that as easily is at that second property that has poor lighting on it. So if nothing else, if I can get you to turn your lights on at night, I'm gonna be a happy person. Is gonna help me out so much. But there's also the technology piece when it comes down to it. And so this is where we talk about alarm systems. When I first came to the Boise Police Department, the most frequent call I would get or question I get asked is about alarm system itself. So in a residential setting, I am very in favor of an alarm system, and here's why for it. And so if we're using alarm system, we're usually losing it typically when we're out away from the house. And so most alarm systems will have some sort of contract for monitoring, where if someone sets off the alarm through opening a door, through breaking a window, through motion, whichever else might come be, we're going to get a call. Law enforcement is going to call so much more quickly than it would happen if that the homeowner did not have the alarm system and was gone for the weekend and came home to find when that crime occurred sometime during the week that they were victimized. And so if nothing else, it's going to alert us. It's going to alert you of a crime more quickly or potential crime more quickly. Plus, every single alarm system I'm seeing has some sort of audible alarm on it. And so when that point is broken, there's sirens and there's stuff going on, letting the person setting off the alarm know that the alarm's set off. And I think that point in and of itself is a great way to deterrent further activity at that property, deter further access into that property. And so I've seen videos of would-be burglars breaking into a property and the alarm went off, and I saw them leaving very, very, very quickly after they knew that access had been detected from there. And so I'm very much in favor of it. Some things to consider when you're considering an alarm system is kind of the installed versus self-installed. And so if you're having someone install it for you, there's typically a cost that comes along with that. And being able to pay that, be okay with that is one thing to consider. A self-installed piece to consider is if you're comfortable with installing that alarm system yourself, because I know a handful of stores I can walk to right now and walk out with an alarm system for a fairly reasonable price where I can monitor myself and install myself, but I have to feel comfortable with installing that in there first and foremost. So two things to consider. The second piece, and this is the most costing of the alarm system, I guess, is what it comes down to, is the monitoring contract. And so researching that and finding a monitor that is going to be most cost effective for what you're looking for when it comes down to it. Some of the systems you can sign up where it's on a almost an as-will basis, a month-to-month basis. And so if you're knowing you're going out of town, you're going out of town a lot for these, these 2-3 months in there with a certain contract, you can only pay for those months right there. And that's all you have to worry about from there. Others, they'll lock you into a year, 2 years, whatever contract from there, they'll monitor it. And then you're stuck paying for that cost for, that whole entire time period until you break it, or unless you break the contract. And once again, have to factor that into the cost of an alarm system, of the good and the bad with it. One thing we found out early on with some homes getting broken into in Boise a few years back is looking into what's kind of the backup piece of there. If my power goes out, is my alarm going to work? If my phone systems are down, is my alarm going to work? And we found a number of systems that didn't have a battery backup, didn't have kind of a cell or any sort of backup, where they were able to communicate an alarm going off to the monitoring company, to the homeowner when they're away from their house. And so that would be a great benefit to have, because we had many people going to very expensive homes that did have alarm systems, but they were cutting the power. They were cutting the phone lines to the house. And so more specifically on the phone lines to the house. And so those alarms were not being communicated to anyone because the right criminal had gone around them. So maybe that's pretty pointless to have. One thing to think about is a Wi-Fi system too, if you have Wi-Fi in your house, because a lot of the cameras, a lot of things like that are ran off Wi-Fi. That's how everything is communicated. And so if you're self-installing an alarm system that needs to have Wi-Fi, another cost to consider, another thing to have at your house to make sure that system is going to work when you have it too. It's going to communicate with you when you need it from there. Camera systems. I'm also a big person in favor of having camera systems in a residential type environment. We are probably getting better video from at-home camera system of a person stealing a package of a vehicle driving by than some banks and some convenience stores, some other businesses that I know that have had their camera systems for forever and just haven't upgraded that. And so the first one we see so much is kind of that doorbell camera, which kind of Fred was talking about earlier. And so there's many companies that offer that product and different services around that. But typically we are getting, as a law enforcement agency, amazing video from theirs of a suspect that we're never going to have unless that camera is from there. If someone comes up and steals a package from a doorstep and we have nothing to go on as of evidence, it's almost always a closed case, because there's nothing for us to follow up on and check with from here on it, unless we find other crimes here and there committed by that person and we kind of link them together. But from an evidentiary side, that gives us immediate evidence to a crime and a great picture of a suspect that we would not have had unless that camera was from there. And those expand to around the house, where you can install them inside your house, from your house, whichever else from there. And they benefit some. I've seen homeowners install them on the side of their house over here, and had some great videos of people trying to break into the property that we might not have had before. even from that doorbell front security camera that they have on the front of the property on that front door, because the person never walked by the property in that setting with that. So I have a couple of videos, and these are both ones I was able to obtain locally from people. Kind of the background about this first one, you see the person and the two people walking up, they have something in their hand. Who knows who these people are, whichever else like that. But watch what happens if they see the camera. And if you heard on the audio at all, the person said to the female, they got a camera system as they're walking by. Did that mean they were coming to break in? No. Did that mean maybe they were coming out to sell them a camera system for their house? Maybe. But the person saw the camera, it had a visible effect on their behaviors, and so they left that property because of that. Here's a second one I have for you, see if it plays. No audio to this one, but you can kind of see the person walking up his bike, parking his bike. Given this whole back area is not the best for visibility, and so that's why I'm assuming the person's walking up to it, walks up, sees the camera. Guess what? That person turns around again and goes away. Do we know officially what their intentions were? No, but homeowner had no clue who that person was or why they would be coming to that property, especially kind of a visible, not a poorly visible area to where their front door was with that. And so it caused reaction in that person and turned them away from that property. And I'm going to say in this case acted as a deterrent to possible activity that person was going to do. Other technology piece that is a little more available now is just the smart lock side we see of everything. And there's the good and the bad that comes with it as well. Given in most cases, you're going to have Wi-Fi, you're going to have system where that's communicating with you, whether it's your computer, your phone, or everything else like that. But there's also the convenience piece of it of, I don't need a key to get in. I have my phone, I can press a button on my phone, my front door is now unlocked, so I can get in. I don't have to worry about something for my keys or whichever else with that. Even going the next step from there, my kids are coming home from school. They forgot their key, they lost their key. I can now press a button on my kid into the house, as opposed to them having to sit on the front doorstep until I get home from there. And so once again, good and bad with it. The technology is available. It's available from so many, local hardware stores. You can get at, just kind of understand, I guess, what the good and the bad is when you're getting to all of it technology wise for there. Here's my lighting piece. And so the house on the left and the house on the right are across the street from each other. But you can see one huge difference with light being on in one property and light being off on the next property. The house property on the left, actually, there's usually another light on the front door that was burned out at the time I took the picture. But how many cars can you see on the left? None. You know why? You can see the whole front of the house and you can see there's nothing in the driveway. On the right-hand side picture, how many vehicles can you see on the driveway?
Same thing.
There's 4, actually, but you can't see a single one. The only thing you can truly see is the small little light from the doorbell that happens to be illuminated, the only light that in the entire area. And so if I was a person looking to commit a crime, looking to check doors in those vehicles, I know no one's going to see me on the one on the right. And so I'm going to walk up to there with much more ease, knowing my activity is not going to be detected by anyone with that. So, and these are just some costs I put together on some simple thing from that, where I probably need to update the cost of electricity to hit 2021. But when you add the cost of electricity, you add the cost of the bulbs you buy, you add the cost of the amount of time to run those bulbs for just 12 hours, which are probably the most you're going to run around here in Boise, Idaho, in the area from our dark hours. It would only cost you to run that bulb $30 for the entire year. If you're going to have all the bulbs across from your house going, maybe $100 for the entire year from that. But if you look at alarm systems and monitoring contracts and stuff like that, that might be a 1 month for your alarm system. That's may or may not have the same effect as those 3 bulbs running across the front of your property, adding visibility to the front of your house. And even think about the next step. What if your house does get broken into? How much is it going to cost to replace that lock, to replace your front door, to replace that window that's going to be broken, or your TV, your computer, your valuables they stole from the inside, or even probably the more invaluable cost is how much do you value your safety? How safe are you going to feel in that environment now, knowing that someone came in and broke into your house on it? So I've said it before, but I'll say it again just to remind everybody: lighting is so hugely important in any sort of residential setting for safety and visibility. And this is kind of the next very interactive piece we had before in the presentation. We're going to do a few workarounds to make it happen on there. But this is how I teach it to our officers out in their patrol academies on how to look at safety and security at a place, looking at it from that offender's eyes, that criminal's eyes, that suspect is going to be breaking into this house. How many ways would that person be able to break into a property like this? And so first and foremost, there's the front door. We see more activity probably happening at the front door than so many other places around there. A person will go up, knock, no one's there. I might try to force the door open through a kick, through other means from there. But then from there, we walk through every single way we would tell a person or how that person could increase the security of that setting. So at a front door, for example, you could increase it by having a solid core door. And this is simple. Go knock on your door. I'm going to bet it's probably a solid core, but I've been to houses in the area where they actually had a closet door on an exterior door to the house, try to save some funds or who knows what for the reason of it. But it was a hollow door, and very easily I could punch through it, kick through it, put a hammer through it, whatever, and have very easy access to the house. And so first and foremost, making sure it's a solid core, whether it's wood, whether it's metal with the filler, whether it's a fiberglass, it's a solid door. That's going to make it much more secure to start with. Then I'm going to look at the lock piece from there and make sure it has not only that handle lock, but it's got a deadbolt on it. And I want a deadbolt on not only the front door, but on the side door that goes into maybe your garage. The back door, if it's the kind of handle door like that as well, to increase the access or the lack of access there, increase security on all those settings of it. I'm going to want to make sure that it's installed a little bit better. And so when you go check your deadbolt, which I encourage you to do after this, go out there and turn the deadbolt and see if you hear a click. If you hear a click, that means it's probably going far enough into the frame of the door where it's going to provide a little bit better of a base on there. So go and check that. We want it to go at least 1 inch into your door frame to cause that secure setting. After you check it, make sure it goes an inch, check out the coverage for the locks on the door frame as well. And so typically when those are coming in a package, they come in with these itty bitty little short screws that go just barely into the door frame. It pretty much holds it on there. And so maybe take a screwdriver, pull one of those out and see how big that screw is. What I would want you to do is replace that tiny screw with a much longer screw. And so 2.5 to 3 inch screw is going to take that from just being in the frame of your door. It's now going to extend that security out into the studs surrounding the door frame itself, making it that much harder to break in and access, because I'm going to hit the door, the deadbolt's going to be in effect, then the part holding it over there is going to keep that in place that much more. And so it's going to be that much harder to access that way. When you check your hinges on your door, I want you to check the exact same screws as well to make sure they're the screws of longer nature that are going to be going into the studs around the door, as opposed to this door frame in of itself. The one asterisk I'm going to put on all of this, if you have windows right around there, that kind of defeats the purpose of the longer screws. And so you're not going to be able to get into that and put those longer screws in there, because you're going to be going into glass, breaking windows, and all sorts of other problems with it. Other things I'm going to look at the front door is the lighting piece of that. Does it have a lighting on there? Which most, by code, it's going to have it on there pretty much every single time. but does the bulb work? Is the lighting turned on? Some things we recommend to homeowners for that lighting piece from that is install dusted on sensors, install timer switches. And so light's going to be turned on when you need it to be on, whether that's a certain time every day when it turns on and a certain time every day when it turns off, or just when it starts getting dim out, that light pops on automatically with the sensor. And so it adds visibility to that spot. Then we look at other things from, that screen door. I'm a fan of that because it adds another barrier up there. Is there a peephole? Is there that camera? Is there anything else up there to add visibility to that front door? Once I look at that, I apply that same setting to every single other door you have around the house. Even in the garage, if there's a garage on the house that has a door that accesses inside, which most of them do, I check that door out the exact same way I check my front door out. Maybe I'm not going to put a camera inside the garage on the door like that, but I'm going to make sure it's solid core. I'm going to make sure there's a deadbolt. I'm going to make sure all those screws, the base is in place, because if I leave my garage door open accidentally, if the cat runs through when I'm closing my garage door, and I don't notice it and it opens up all night, at least I have the interior of my house protected where I'm at, my loved ones are at, to prevent access from getting further inside my dwelling with there. Next, I move on to other doors and stuff they have. French doors, I need to make sure they are secured in the middle, which the less space they have in between them, the more secure a base you can have, the more you can have a tougher lock holding them there. I want to make sure there's no access on the outside to that crack between the doors, so that's not easier to force open, pry open, anything like that. I'm going to make sure there's something to secure them a little bit more thoroughly, and most of them will come where you can put locks that go up into the top of the frame or to the floor. They're going to provide a little bit stronger base on that. If there's sliding doors, sliding big glass doors, we've seen so many settings. Just that simple dowel trick or piece of wood trick that so many people use is great for it, because you put it in there, it's hopefully easy to get in and out by a screw, by something there we can lift it out easily in case you have to evacuate an emergency. But it's something that provides a barrier so that door doesn't slide open, and it locks it a little more thoroughly with that. I look at windows. First and foremost, I look at windows for the locks. Typically, most locks you're going to have on there will be good enough for the most part in keeping it there. There's additional locks you can add to every single window, depending the setting, depending the circumstances, that you can get at your local hardware store. That could be anywhere from a couple bucks to much more expensive, that are going to add an additional method of protection on there. And once again, finding what works for you, for what you're comfortable of with that. I look for the blinds piece. I like to see if they have blinds, to see have ways where I can shut access out so people can't see in at night of what's going on. I look for screens. While screens may not much add a huge barrier for people breaking in an open window, it's one more pain in the tail that people are going to have to get through and deal with before they can access a property. So making sure a screen's on there and it's in good condition with that. And there's so many things you can do on windows, from specific alarms on the windows themselves that go off if there's rattling, if there's people going onto it. I've seen actually security screens you can have additionally put on there where you can have the window open, but it protects a little more, adds a little more of a barrier for people trying to break in, cut through screens and anything else like that, but still maintains an easy way for a homeowner to get out a window in case they have to with it. Then I'll look at just your other simple things that have on there. Do you have your numbers on your house easily visible? So if someone, first responder, is responding to your house in emergency, they know your house a little more easily from the house down the street or your next door neighbor with that. Even talking security plans, everything else from there. On the lighting piece like that, like I already mentioned, the timers, the switches and stuff to put on there so the lights come on when you want them to, but even on the inside of the house, to maybe a lamp, maybe a room, having those set up as well. And so if you have to come home in late night hours, that light might be on waiting for you. Plus it gives a benefit to everyone else that might be walking by, driving by, that they think someone is inside that house because there's lights on in there. So I talk about fences, I talk about garages, I talk about so many pieces like that from there, but it's all kind of to the benefit, to the specific of what the homeowner wants, because I can tell you a million things to keep your garage more safe. Like even having your garage door closed would be a good benefit from there. Or if you have a shed outbuilding, have a locking on there, or even your gate, having a lock on your gate or just some sort of controlled method so you can't easily open your gate from the front. But ultimately comes down to the homeowner and what they're comfortable with and what they're able to go with from there. No matter anything I talk to for security on this residence or whatever residence, it's going to be more effort, it's going to be more time, it's going to be a pain to somebody. But finding what you're comfortable with, finding what you're good with, and kind of acting on that from there, and kind of taking almost baby steps into it from there. So like I said, doors, windows, the garage, the gate. Any questions on those next few pieces? I see a couple more in chat. If Fred, you want to go through those.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, there's a couple of questions here, one of which you did answer. These are questions that came up in the chat box. And the question came up, can storm doors, and you answered the screen doors on the windows, improve security as they open outward?
Yep, I'm all sorts of just additional barrier right there. Once again, you have it on there, you still have the visibility where you can see out, but it adds one more barrier in place someone's going to have to go through if they're going to access the property, try to access through the home through that window. And especially, once again, the fire department likes to remind you, still need the ability to get out if you have to. So being able to easily get out that, whether it's having a handle, whether it's having a push off, whether it's having whichever to get out easily in case you need to in an emergency.
Another chat box question involves lighting. Is it best to leave the porch light on continuously or just during the night?
I'm going to say just during the night, because if that light is on, that's not normally on all the time, is on all the time, it might be an indicator to the person walking by that no one's home, because most people will turn the light off in the middle of the day, or they'll go off in the middle of the day because they're not needed from there. And so I think the question also mentioned motion lights and stuff like that up there. Whatever you need to do, whether it's a motion light, whether it's a timer, whether it's stuff like that, where you can get that light to go off when you don't need it, but it can turn on when you do need it. So if it comes down to it having no light on or a light on all the time, I'm going to say light on all the time. But I think the best method is to have it on when it needs to be, through your motion lights, through your timers and switches, stuff like that. I don't have the video in this one, but I've seen an amazing video that the Meridian Police Department shared with me of a person, which I'm assuming had ill intent to break into the homeowner's house, walk through their gate, walk up to a side door to start prying it open, and the motion light pops on. I've never seen the person move faster away from that door and that person. They took off so quickly because they don't know if that's a person on the inside turning the light on, or that's the security system or whatever. Obviously, they knew they were detected when that light came on, and so they took off very quickly.
Another question we have from the chat box would involve the maintenance of your property like you spoke to, but this would involve, since we're coming up on winter, does, shoveling the walks, snow removal of your entryway, do they play a role in deferring any kind of theft?
Yeah, actually, the whole next section I have here is on talks about kind of those vacation pieces like that, talks more of those visibility pieces like that, and making it look lived in. And snow removal is one of the things we're going to talk about here in a second.
Very good. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up to everybody. So if anybody has a question, go right ahead and ask the question. If you can, everybody should be open now.
Hey, Fred, I saw one that just came in the chat. I'll go ahead and cover it real quick. Many doors have glass that can be cut. Should a large or some time be installed to prevent breaking glass and using the inside access to the deadbolts? That is one of the problems with glass in a door, especially, or right around near a door, is it can break, which could give someone an access into the deadbolt and everything else from there. And so The good piece about that is glass breaking typically makes a noise. And so most criminals I've seen around here don't have the specific tools to cut glass. And so if they have to break that glass, it's usually through a hammer or a rock, stuff like that. That's going to make a noise. And that's to your benefit. That's to everyone else's benefit from there. But to protect glass, you can install certain types of glass or certain films of that nature on them to prevent the breakage when it happens on there. And so I don't have my videos in this one because I cover them a lot in more a commercial type setting. But if you're interested in that, if you have that glass that could be accessible or inside the door, talk to a glass company about glazings they have and films they can have put on it. It's kind of like a tinting almost in some settings. We've seen put on windows to reduce kind of the glare coming in, but they can put it on there. And so if I'm on the outside and I'm smashing the heck out of them with a hammer or anything else, the glass is going to break, but the window is going to stay in place. It's going to stay in place in its frame and take that much more effort to get in through there. I think I've seen a few videos where they're comparing access back and forth, and obviously someone kicked in the one glass and one in there and was in with a few seconds, but it took the person on the second side like a minute, 2-3 minutes to try to even get through the glass because the film was on it. And what you're hoping for in so much of this is that much more time for you to notice it, for the light to pop on, for the alarm to go off, for the neighbor driving by, walking by, whatever, to see that activity and hopefully report that activity and get it to stop.
Now, if anybody has a question of Ed, all you have to do is unmute yourself on the little microphone down on the left-hand corner and ask your question.
If there's no further, we got some more question time at the end. We're going to go to the next section, the landscaping piece of it. And I could probably go a whole class just on this, but the kind of basics we're looking for landscape. Looks like I got muted there as well. So the main thing I'm looking for, kind of the one-on-one stuff I want people to think about is landscaping is trees, shrubs, and kind of ground cover pieces of it. And so, and it's all where you plant them and the maintenance of it. And so trees, we typically want anywhere maintained 6 to 7 feet off the ground. What that's going to do is create a grid visibility window you have. So it's not going to be blocking your windows you have there where people can still see out mainly those first 4 windows to everything. We want them away from the house. And so we're not unintentionally creating hiding spaces by having a big tree too close, or we're not giving access to upper levels of the house to make it easier to get in access that way. Okay. There's a good example of trees that are planted far enough away from the residents in this case. They're trimmed high enough on the ground, and so everyone in the windows you see on your side there can see out very easily to the yard, to the street, to anything else from there, and it's not giving any sort of unneeded access too high up. This is one, well, where you see the tree on the left, there's a little bit of glare from the picture I took there, but the way the leaves have grown, the branches they've grown, it was basically maybe a couple feet off the ground. And so from a person walking by, driving by, even the homeowners inside trying to look out, it creates a big obstruction to that whole view right there to see what's going on in your neighborhood, on your sidewalk, on your property with it. This was in a setting, I'm sure when that tree was planted, it was very, very, very small and not obstructing the light. But a trick I have to teach everyone is trees grow faster than houses and light poles do. And so while it might have looked great there to start with and wasn't blocking anything, it was now blocking the entire lighting to that area because it grew up past to where the light was from there. And so trying to manage that out and not having shrubs and trees and stuff like that actually block the lighting on your property. For the shrubs,
are you done with your?
For the shrubs, we have what I'm talking about. Pretty much we want people to keep them maintained maximum maybe 2 to 3 feet in height. And so that keeps them below windows, that keeps them almost below your knees from there. And so it doesn't create as much of a hiding place for people. It doesn't obstruct visibility as much that way. Keep them 6 feet away from doors, walkways, and windows. So you're not creating hiding spaces too close to there. Some people like their very, very big shrubs from there, and I understand that. And so I've encouraged them in some settings is to kind of trim away the bottom towards more of a V-shaped pattern. And so while it's still big and shrubby, I guess up here, down at the bottom, there's visibility to the below. And so if a person was trying to walk behind it, hide behind it, it at least gives less visibility to that person behind there, because you can see feet, you can see legs, you can see whatever else from that. So one of our earlier pictures I showed, this is a great example of that, where you go across all the shrubs there, and they're trimmed down low, they're trimmed below the window, as you can see on the one on the right hand side of the screen, and allowing visibility, to and from the property. This was a few houses away in the same neighborhood I used to live in. I'm sure all those shrubs were very small when they got planted there, but like everything else, they grow, and now it was preventing a little more blockage to the visibility around the property, especially right here where I took the picture of the front door anymore with the large shrub there. Same neighborhood. Once again, you can barely see the front door up there with it, because you planted the 2 big shrubs right there that weren't maintained. And so anyone could walk up there and virtually not be seen to anyone from the street walking by, driving by. This is actually in a church locally. And the story behind the shrubs is they were planted there to kind of reduce access or visibility to kind of the dumpster area, because obviously that can be an eyesore for so many reasons. But over time, they had grown bigger and bigger and bigger, and had created a great additional wall back there that still had visibility and still had access for neighborhood kids to go by and do all sorts of nefarious things in these cases. So I encourage them to either take them out, trim the bottom, do something with it to open up the visibility there. And so you can see the maintenance gentleman on the left-hand side of your screen trimming. This is what it ended up in the end. And I'm not sure the Q-tip look is for everybody, but in effectiveness, all the activity that was unwanted happening down there before stopped completely, because it was now visible. And so if someone would detect it, someone would see it's going on. And so it stopped 100% from there. I've actually seen this exact same setting this kind of trimming in a few different residential type pieces where they wanted to maintain the shrub. They didn't want to pull it out, but they wanted to allow the visibility back and forth. So they just trimmed it up a little bit to allow that visible access back there. Very nice house. Once again, very big shrub now that blocks the entire access to or visibility to the front windows, anything else like that. You can't see the front property. Barrier plants, or some have called them hostile vegetation before, I encourage people to plant them in areas where you want to discourage access. So say you have a blind window or a blind area on your property that you can't see as well, or you can't light as well. You can plant that shrub there, that rose bush, that barberry, and just by its thorny nature, it discourages people from accessing that area. Given you still have to maintain it, you still have to take care of it. But I've seen a few plants where it was a certain type of plum that had, like spikes on it. That is obviously a very hostile type of vegetation that's going to discourage any sort of access to that area. That's a great case right there where it has the barberry on the bottom in front of the window, where it discourages access up to that. This is in my neighborhood, and great theory in behind the planting the shrubs and stuff where they had them to discourage access. So it went barberry rose, which was very, very good. Unfortunately not maintained as well. We talked maintenance earlier, where it did end up blocking a lot of visibility into the property because of that. On the ground covers, on the rocks, on the things like that, I usually encourage rocks for ground cover as opposed to bark, just because as a security tool, if I'm going to walk across gravel, I'm not going to walk across anything else, it makes a noise. And so once again, increases that chance of that person or persons being detected when they're walking by on there. And so I encourage to use it, around windows and doorways, because because it makes that sound, but also use small enough rocks and so they can't be used as a smashing access tool that way. And that's just a case in point right here of the picture I showed earlier, where it has all the rocks, all the gravel in there between the two houses. I guarantee anyone walks through there, it's going to make a noise, and the homeowners on either side of that can tell that someone is out there with that. Boise Police does go out and help people assess their security in their neighborhoods. I know if you call your local law enforcement agency outside of Boise, you can ask for similar types of services where they come and take a look at your property or just talk to you on your property. Obviously, with COVID, access going out has been a little bit reduced with that. And so in many cases, especially with victim type situations, we've contacted people before and just kind of walk through the security with them. Everything I talked about, looking at the pictures here, going through that with them, from looking at your main entrance to your property, looking at your side doors, your back doors, any sliding doors, cellar doors, gates, locks, you name it, to looking at your windows, to looking at your shrubbery and anything else safety wise from there. And so I believe I'm going to have my email pop up here on the end. If anyone wants to contact me, I'm more than happy to send out our sheet for you to take a look at for yourself, or more than happy to have you reach out to me and we can talk through, we can walk through it, we can go through it from there. The vacation piece, which got alluded to a little bit earlier in the presentation of the questions. So ultimately, I think the goal when you're away from your house, whether it's vacation, whether it's even just for the weekend, going to somewhere else, is to try to make your house look as lived in as possible. And so just from the information side of who knows you're on vacation, we tell people to not try to advertise your plans to everyone, especially on social networking sites, social media, things of that nature. And so people that have access to there know you're away from the house, but you do want to have people know where you're going, that you're going to be away. And so they can know when you're supposed to be back. They can know to follow up you in case you don't return, or they can just simply keep an eye on your house to have the thirst point. And here, a trusted neighbor to keep an eye, to collect your mail, to water your plants, to do whatever like that, it is a great method for security as well. And so we have a great story from that, where one of our neighborhoods was had a great connection between neighbors on there. And so one person got home, saw some wrestling around going on to the neighbor's house. They didn't think they were at home because thought they were out of town. And so they called the neighbor up. It's like, hey, you guys home? No, we're gonna call for the weekend. And so they knew their activity at that house was now in this essence criminal. So they called the police, and we were actually able to arrive to the property and grab, so I think it was 2 of the 3 people that were breaking into the house at the time as they were exiting the property, solved that crime, got the property back to that neighbor, plus solved so many more crimes up the street that the people had committed before they got to that property, just by one neighbor paying attention and looking out for everyone. So emergency numbers, give those to our emergency keys, stuff like that, give those to your trusted neighbor, to your relative that's going to be there to keep an eye on the property for it. And when it goes to your newspapers, mail, whatever else that gets delivered to your property, packages, you can put those on hold or have them delivered to that neighbor, have them pick them up and watch your property for you that way. If they're a nice enough neighbor, yeah, maybe they'll put out their garbage cans for you and put them back. And so once again, it has that lived in kind of activity, or even have them to park their car in your driveway occasionally, so it looks like there's someone at that property. And that could even go into in the bottom point on there, if they want to mow your lawn for you, hey, that's a great neighbor, or even move the snow or stuff like that, just to make that property look lived in. And so that might be when you call and have the lawn service come and service that weekend, or you even have them drive in and out of your driveway to make tracks in there, so it looks like people are coming and going from the property with that. The lighting pieces come in both on the outside and the inside to make it look and seem lived in by having the light go on and off. Or we'll even tell people to set up a radio or a TV, something like that, on that same kind of timer switch too. And so there's noise coming from the house, and so it sounds like it's lived in. But make sure when you leave, you're checking your deadbolts, you're checking your windows, you're checking your garage door, making sure all that is nice and shut. You have that good secure basis. We've even told people from time to time it's going to be out long enough, maybe as opposed to having your garage door on the remote. maybe go and unplug the remote, and so someone can't try to access it that way. They can't try to trip it where it comes open in there. And so one more method of keeping them outside your property. For anyone interested in Neighborhood Watch, we still have active Neighborhood Watch program throughout the city. It's changed a little bit. We're getting more involvement from our neighborhood officers, as opposed to just ran strictly through our crime prevention unit here at Boise PD. But we highly encourage people, if nothing else, to an active program just to get to know the neighbors. And if nothing else from it, they have a little more connection to the Boise Police Department from it. When we're talking to our neighbors that active have in the program, they believe it can help them reduce crime. It helps them have those connections between their neighbors. Plus, it helps them through education on our behalf of telling them the good, the bad of what's going on in the neighborhood, so they can be aware of that, so they can report it. Plus, those tips and techniques to make their houses safer of what's anything else from that. So that concludes all my slides today, except for the question one and my contact information next. So, Fred, do we want to open it up for any last questions, comments anyone would have?
Let's do that, Ed. At this point, let me unmute everybody. They are unmuted. They will have to unmute themselves if they do have a question. So unmute yourself at the little microphone in the lower left-hand corner if you have a question, and go ahead and ask. Looks like somebody in Garden Crazy has a question about crime statistics. What are the crime statistics doing in Boise?
You know what? We're still on a good trend of many, many years, like so many parts of the nation, where we're on a steep decline from there. If you pop onto the Ada County website, you can type in your neighborhood, and the Ada County Sheriff's neighbors website, you type in your neighborhood, your address on there, and it kind of shows you the calls for service they have for any type of thing. Given we're not going to tell you every single little detail on it, but it kind of gives you a good reflection of what's happening from there. I would say the vast majority of the stuff we see in our neighborhoods is truly opportunity type crimes of a garage door left open, a car left unlocked, things of that nature. And so the bad part about it is it's happening. The good part about it is we have a huge effect on those crimes ever occurring, because we can close our garage door, we can lock our car doors, we can take out the stuff like that to prevent that crime from happening altogether with that. So also things we will talk to people about, and in our neighborhood watch groups, especially, we've kind of asked them and kind of talk to them on what their concerns are in their neighborhoods. And we see so many people, their main concern is speeding in their neighborhoods. And it's a concern, and we want to follow up with that. Given I'd have them be concerned about speeding than have them be concerned about I got muted again, sorry. But the main thing we see is complaints of speeding from there, which to a certain level, I'm okay with that happening, because that means there's not other types of crimes going on as much from there. That means that's not occurring, which is a very good thing. And so there's ways you can report speeding through the different websites, through the different law enforcement agencies here to follow up with that. But we're still a very, very safe community, Boise, Idaho, even if we got more and more people moving into here.
And I do have a question myself. I really enjoyed that comparison you showed of lighting costs to the cost of a new TV. My subdivision has covenants which require the driveway lights to be on, and I've always wondered, is that a good method? And obviously it is a good method to defer crime in the neighborhood, because when I look in my cul-de-sac and all the lights are on, it would certainly, to me, diffuse any theft that might occur.
Yeah, it's a great method. It's a very simple method, and that's why they did that exact same thing, is to allow the visibility from there, and ideally keep the crime away. Given if someone is that wanting to go break into that car. I'm not sure the light's going to stop them, but it's going to cause enough people to think twice about it to go somewhere else. That it's going to be a great method, a great simple method for you.
Does anybody have any questions of Ed? Looks like we're home free, Ed.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to pop up this last screen here. If anyone has any questions, if there's any follow-up, there's my desk line, there's my email. I'll leave it on here for a little bit. Feel free to reach out to ask questions. I'll send you our little security guide that we physically walk off when we go out to residential settings like that. And if you're even interested in neighborhood watch, how to get those going as well, I'm the person to talk to. Go ahead and email me and I will get you all that information. But if not, thank you guys so much for your time today. Thank you, Fred, for helping facilitate this. Thank you for the New Knowledge Ventures Network for setting this up, and have a good day. I saw one more chat coming in, Fred.
Thank you, Ed. Excellent job. I really enjoyed it. It was very, very fulfilling in terms of my own home. So I appreciate the fact that you're willing to do what you did. Wonderful.
Always happy to help.
Thank you again. In order to leave the presentation, in the lower right-hand corner is a button called Leave. So if you're leaving, go ahead and click on the Leave, and that will get you back to your home page. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Talk to you soon. Bye.